Hi there, my name is Michael Middleton and I'm the owner and founder of TexasBowhunter.com and the Texas Bowhunters Journal. You may have noticed in our premiere issue of the journal we have an interactive recipe section, and in that we have a jambalaya risotto. And so risotto is more of a technique than a recipe, but I'd like to go over kind of my method that I use to make a risotto. And as you can see, I've already got some soft vegetables that are already, I've got some bell pepper, and I actually put a little bit of jalapeno in it for kick, but you don't have to use that. I've got some green onion, I've got some garlic and some celery chopped up here. In my pan, what I've done is I've rendered some bacon fat. I just took a little bit of bacon, I rendered that off to get a little bit of the grease in there, and then I have some pre-cooked chicken. I've got a warming rack here. It's actually just a little griddle that I have on my stove, and I've got it set at low, so I'm just keeping this warm. But what I'm doing is I'm pre-cooking all of my meat in advance, and then I'm going to pull that from the pan and do the vegetables. In here I've also got some just some sausage that I've got rendering down, and that's going to build just some additional flavor. What I'm doing is caramelizing that sausage, and what I'm using is just a Pittsburgh hot link actually, but most of the traditional jambalaya would use like a andouille type sausage, but any kind of sausage will do, really any kind of meat that you want, tasso ham, something like that. So I've got that rendered down. What I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and just remove this from the pan and put it on this griddle just to keep it warm. Again, all the meat's going to be pre-cooked. Alright, so we'll go ahead and move this out of here. And then I've got about a half stick of butter, and that's just going to add a little bit more fat, a little more creaminess, just a little richer flavor to it. And I'm going to let that kind of render down here, and I'm going to just sweat those vegetables in this combination of kind of bacon fat, the butter, the sausage, and again I'm just going to let this kind of brown up a little bit, the butter, and that's just going to continue to build depths of flavor, which is what we're trying to accomplish with the risotto. A traditional Cajun jambalaya uses just regular rice. I had some risotto, so I decided just to do a kind of a different take on a jambalaya and do a risotto jambalaya. Okay, so now that this butter's kind of rendered down here, I'm just going to take the vegetables here. So I've got the, again, I've got the peppers, the onions. You can use celery if you wanted to use it. I'm going to reserve just a little bit of that green onion tips here for a garnish. Okay, I've got some garlic that's chopped up here as well, but I'm not going to put that in just yet because garlic will real quickly burn and it'll make your dish bitter. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these vegetables all sweated down and soft, and then we'll add that garlic right there at the end before we start the risotto process. We want to do this on a low to medium-low heat. Okay, this process of sweating the onions and the vegetables is probably going to take about, we usually do it about 6 or 7 minutes. So we're going to, with technology, we're going to skip ahead just a little bit, and we'll be right back with you. Okay, so now we've got our vegetables, and they're nice and soft and just barely translucent, and the smells in here are just absolutely incredible. You can only smell this with the green onion and the bell pepper. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add this garlic in here. Okay, don't worry about it. We get some more of those green onions. So we're adding our garlic in. And we're just going to let those cook for just a couple of seconds here. Again, those will burn really quickly and will provide or make a bitter taste in your risotto if you're not careful. Okay, so now that we've done that, now it's time to add our risotto rice. Okay, and I've got just some standard short grain arborio rice here, which is pretty typical for making risotto. And I'm just going to add a couple of cups of that rice right directly in here. Make sure we're kind of on the low, medium low. I'm going to use about half of this, which would be about 2-3 cups. Okay. All right, and then what we want to do is we just want to kind of stir this around, get it moving around, and what we're going to do is we want to get, number one, we want it to kind of get a nice little toasty flavor to it, and then the second thing we want to do is we want to make sure that it completely coats with that bacon fat and that sausage grease and the butter that we have in here, and that's that's going to help it to release those starches as we go through the cooking process on it. Okay, so just for a couple of minutes, we're going to stir this around. Just get it nice and toasty until the edges of that rice are just somewhat translucent. You'll kind of start to smell that toasted rice smell when it starts to get to that point. And again, we're doing this kind of on a low to medium low heat. Okay, so we're just going to stir that around. Okay, so now we've got this kind of stirred around in here. Again, this process, we did this for about a couple of minutes just to get the edges just barely translucent and that nice toasty flavor to it. Okay, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of deglaze this pan with just a little bit of white wine. And what we're going to do is this is again just going to add a little bit of flavor. It's going to help get some of that crusty fond stuff that's off the bottom from the sausage. So we're just going to put just a little bit of white wine in here. Just enough to almost cover that rice up there. Okay, and then we're going to just again constantly stir it. You need to make sure that you're stirring very frequently when you're making a risotto. Okay, and we're just going to let this wine cook down, and the rice will actually absorb all of this wine in there, and it's going to provide just an additional again layer of flavor. And we're just going to continue to stir this until that white wine is completely absorbed. You can use any white wine that you want to for this. If you prefer not to, you don't have to use wine. You can use any kind of liquid that you want. We've got chicken stock that we're going to do for the rest of the process. You can put water in there. I just think the wine adds a nice little depth of flavor to it. Okay, so we're going to stir this in. Just constantly moving that rice around. Okay. Alright, so when you can kind of scrape the pan like this and it stays and the liquid doesn't come back through, you can see that it's mostly all the way absorbed. Okay, so that wine is very well absorbed into the rice. So now we're just going to begin our normal risotto technique. So we're going to add, I've got actually some chicken broth here, or chicken stock. Okay, and I've kind of flavored it just because we're doing kind of a Cajun theme on this jambalaya. I've taken that chicken stock and I've added a little bit of just some Cajun seasoning to it, some crawfish boil basically to that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just ladle it on here, just enough to cover that rice. Okay, and again what we're going to do is we want to stir this very frequently. Keep that rice moving in there. And what we're going to do here is we're going to continue to kind of the same process that we did with the white wine. That chicken stock is going to absorb out. It's going to absorb into that rice, and it's going to release those starches out of that rice and make a real nice creamy consistency. Okay, so this whole process will take approximately, it'll take about 25 or 30 minutes. And what we'll do is when we start getting that dry bottom again, just like we did before, we'll add another couple of ladlefuls of that chicken stock. And just allow that to absorb in. And like I say, the total process is going to take probably 25 to 30 minutes. Probably going to use about, in combination of the white wine and the chicken stock for a couple cups of the risotto, is probably going to take about 6 cups of liquid. Okay, so we'll just continue to stir this around, keep that moving. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and advance forward here, and we'll come back in just a minute and finish up the process. Okay, so at this point it's probably been about 25-30 minutes that we've been stirring this and then ladling in one step at a time until it's absorbed our chicken stock. And so now what we want to do is we want to get a spoon and just kind of taste it and make sure that the rice is at the right consistency first, and then also check it for flavor. Okay, so I'm going to take a little taste. Okay, so the rice is just about perfect. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit of salt to it. Okay, and then kind of stir that in. Now it's probably a little bit, I still need to add in the meats here that we have. And so I'm going to add just a little bit more, one more ladleful of that chicken stock, not to completely cover, but just to kind of loosen it up a little bit. Okay, so kind of stir that in. And now I'm going to start adding the other ingredients that I have here. And I've got about a half a can that I'm going to add of just diced tomatoes. Okay, and that's going to add that kind of that nice tomato flavor that you get in a jambalaya, and it's also going to add color. And also to get that nice red, rich color, I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of just a tomato paste in there as well. So we'll kind of stir that around, let that color get incorporated in there. And traditional jambalaya is the rice in it is typically more of a red color. Okay, so we're going to stir that around in here, get that incorporated in. Okay, so now that that's stirred in, now we're just going to add our meats back in. Okay, and so like I said, we've got our sausage that's just been sitting over here on a warmer. Okay, we're going to put that in there. Okay, and then our chicken, add it back in there. I've actually reserved just a little bit of this bacon that we rendered down in the beginning of it. Why not? Let's go ahead and add that in there as well. Just additional flavor. Okay. Heck, why not? Let's just add a little bit more. And then somewhere around here, I've got some crawfish tails. And crawfish tails is pretty typical to put into a risotto. Actually, I should say into a jambalaya. So I'm going to add these crawfish tails just right in here as well. And you can use fresh or frozen. These are actually frozen. I let them thaw a little bit, but you can see that they're still kind of in a little bit of a frozen state. So what I want to do is, since this meat was all the way cooked through, I'm just going to let it heat up. Now, especially those crawfish tails, just let those warm up, and then once it's warm, it's ready. It's done. Okay. We'll make one last check for flavor. See if it needs to add any seasoning, salt, or like a Cajun seasoning, a Cajun blaze. Man, that's looking and smelling so good. I'm going to go ahead and turn the stove off here on my chicken stock. Alright, so I'm going to grab a fresh spoon here. And let's just give that a quick taste. Okay, so that's really good. And I am going to add just a little bit of this Cajun blaze seasoning that I have here. Just to add a nice little kick to it. Okay, and maybe just a little bit more salt. That's a salt-free seasoning there. Okay, so I'm going to add that in there. And then finally, just to get it that creaminess and a little bit of an additional salt flavor, I've got some Parmesan cheese. And I'm just going to top that with a healthy portion of that Parmesan cheese. And we're going to fold that into it. Let that kind of melt through it. Oh, what the heck, let's go ahead and add all of it. Okay, so we're just going to stir that in. Okay, so now that that's nice and incorporated, now it's just time to plate and serve. Grab me a plate. I'm just going to get a nice big healthy scoopful of that in there. That's nice, rich and creamy. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm just going to garnish it with just a little bit of this leftover green onion that I have here. Got a little bit more of that Cajun seasoning to the top. And there you have it. I'll take my spoon here, take me a nice bite of that. That is absolutely fantastic. So there you have it, a jambalaya risotto. And again, we thank you so much for purchasing our premier issue of the Texas Bowhunters Journal. We hope you subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you more amazing videos.